Coming up in our newscast tonight, the official slogan for the upcoming Inter-Korean Summit is revealed, and efforts are underway to boost cross-border relations ahead of the big event. Seoul also sends envoys to Beijing and Tokyo to brief them on the latest developments on the Korean peninsula. U.S. President Donald Trump appears to be all smiles regarding North Korea upon learning the regime's leader Kim Jong-un expressed unwavering faith in the commander-in-chief. Washington's top diplomat appears unfazed by such gestures, saying there's still a lot of work to be done. The world has been continually shook up mainly by geopolitical risks and high inflation rates. However, South Korea's central bank reports the local financial market appears relatively unaffected. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. The nation's top office made several announcements regarding the upcoming Inter-Korean Summit. The slogan and the event's official name were unveiled. There are plans to propose that Parliament ratify the agreements from the historic April meeting as well. Plus, Seoul's special envoys that just returned from Pyongyang will visit Japan and China to brief them on the results of the meeting held up north. Our Cheonggye correspondent Hwang Ho-jun starts us off.
Peace, a new future. That's the slogan for the 2018 Inter-Korean Summit Pyongyang.
The summit, which will be the first held in Pyongyang in 11 years, is aimed at carrying out the Panmunjom Declaration, in which President Moon pledged to visit Pyongyang in the fall. The slogan conveys the people's hope for the two Koreas to open a new future together amid a transition period in the history of the Korean peninsula.
The announcement came Friday afternoon, a day after the South Korean government confirmed the summit's date and agenda. Those details came out of the South Korean special envoy's trip to Pyongyang on Wednesday. To explain those results to China and Japan, the Blue House confirmed that the two of the same envoys will be going to Beijing and Tokyo. The director of the National Security Office, Chung Eui-yong, will go to Beijing this Saturday and meet with Yang Jie-chi, a top official at China's Central Foreign Affairs Commission. And the director of the National Intelligence Service, Seo Hoon, will go to Japan next Monday to brief Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Also, the presidential office of Cheongwade said it plans to write the Panmunjom Declaration into law.
The government will submit a bill to ratify the Panmunjom Declaration to the National Assembly next Tuesday after it's approved by the cabinet. Cost estimates for its implementation will also be submitted.
The Blue House says it decided to propose parliamentary ratification to boost inter-Korean relations before the summit in Pyongyang, slated to take place from September 18th to the 20th. Ratifying the agreement reached by President Moon and the North Korean leader back in April will ensure that the Panmunjom Declaration is enforced under a legal framework so that it remains effective regardless of a change of government. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Staying with the hotly anticipated summit, the main press center will be set up at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul because a joint press pool will be formed to cover the event in Pyongyang. The top office confirmed that the center will serve up to 1,000 journalists with facilities to help them monitor the situation up north in real time. An online platform will also be set up to make sure pool reports, photos, and videos of the summit will be downloadable. Foreign reporters will also be able to get the main content in 9 languages, including English, Chinese, Arabic, and Spanish. The event will be broadcast live via YouTube as well. Creating permanent peace on the peninsula. That's the ultimate goal of President Moon Jae-in. Joseon shares with us the South Korean leader's remarks made during an interview with the Indonesian press ahead of President Joko Widodo's state visit to Seoul.
Seoul's top office unveiled its plan to speed up the process of denuclearization. In an interview with Indonesian newspaper Kompas on Friday, South Korean President Moon Jae-in emphasized the implementation of what was agreed at the Panmunjom and Singapore summits, and that the two leaders' goal is to produce irrevocable progress by the end of this year. By irrevocable progress, he means ultimately creating permanent peace on the Korean peninsula through North Korea's complete nuclear disarmament. President Moon also said he would like to see the declaration to end the war within 2018, which marks the 65th anniversary of the armistice between the two Koreas, as a pragmatic step to build trust. The interview comes ahead of Indonesian President Joko Widodo's state visit to South Korea this coming Sunday. President Moon had dispatched his special envoys to Pyongyang on Wednesday to help resolve the denuclearization talks that have reached an impasse in recent months. The delegation came back with good news as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un reaffirmed his commitment to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula during their meeting. As for the statement, the Blue House spokesperson Kim Hee-kyum during a press briefing on Friday confirmed the president plans to reach permanent peace in the region based on the April 27th Panmunjom Declaration and the June 12th Sentosa Agreement. President Moon is to meet with Kim Jong-un in the North Korean capital of Pyongyang over 3 days starting on September 18th. President Moon also vowed that South Korea will not only pour all its efforts into improving inter-Korean relations, but will also work to improve Pyongyang-Washington ties and facilitate the process of denuclearization. 최시영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the two Koreas requested the United Nations adopt the translated English version of the Panmunjom Declaration as an official document. Seoul's foreign ministry revealed the letter sent to UN Chief Antonio Guterres, which asked for the circulation of the document at the 72nd session of the General Assembly and Security Council. The ministry anticipates such a move will reaffirm the two Koreas' determination to implement the agreements from the historic summit, as well as help gain support and consensus from the international community. The declaration was made on April 27th when President Moon and his North Korean counterpart met for the first time. It aims to achieve lasting peace and denuclearization on the peninsula. The latest coming from Pyongyang includes its leader's vote of confidence in his American counterpart. It didn't take long for Donald Trump to thank Kim Jong-un for the respectful remarks. However, his point man on North Korean affairs remains adamant that it's a long road ahead and not much distance is covered. Park Hee-jun zooms in on the reaction from Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump has thanked North Korean leader Kim Jong-un for his unwavering faith in him. Tweeting a thank you to Kim on Thursday, President Trump said that despite bumps in the road, they will, quote, get it done together, signaling there could be further negotiations between the two sides. The tweet came after the North Korean leader reaffirmed his commitment to completely denuclearize the Korean peninsula. South Korean National Security Advisor Chung Eui-yong revealed after meeting Kim in Pyongyang that Kim expressed unchanged faith in the U.S. president and that he planned to denuclearize within Trump's first term in office, which ends in January 2021. But while President Trump praised Kim, his Secretary of State took a harder line. During his trip to India, Mike Pompeo emphasized that there is still a lot of work to be done.
It is the case that there is still an enormous amount of work to do. We haven't had any nuclear tests. We haven't had any missile tests, which we consider a good thing. But the work of convincing Chairman Kim to make the strategic shift that we've talked about for a brighter future for the people of North Korea continues.
Pointing out that North Korea is the only country with commitments under UN Security Council resolutions, Pompeo added the U.S. will continue efforts to enforce them to ensure North Korea delivers on the promises it made at the Singapore summit in June. Attention now turns to how the indirect dialogue will affect the denuclearization process and whether there will be a breakthrough in the apparently stalled negotiations after President Trump canceled Pompeo's trip to Pyongyang last month. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Washington charged a North Korean hacker for allegedly playing a key role in the cyber attacks on Sony Pictures and other entities carried out since 2014, shortly after the Treasury Department slapped sanctions on that very individual. For details, let's turn to our Kan Young-woo.
The U.S. Department of Justice has charged 34-year-old North Korean programmer Park Jin-hyuk with conspiracy to conduct a number of cyber attacks and computer intrusions.
Members of the conspiracy are responsible for some of the most damaging and most well-known cyber intrusions in history, including the cyber attack targeting Sony Pictures, the cyber heist of Bangladesh Bank, and creating the WannaCry ransomware.
The U.S. Department of the Treasury also announced sanctions on Park and his agency, saying that the 34-year-old worked on behalf of the North Korean government as an employee of the Joseon-Expo joint venture. The Treasury added that all property and interest of both Joseon-Expo and Park within the U.S. or in the possession of U.S. citizens must be frozen. U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said the United States will not allow North Korea to undermine global cybersecurity to advance its interests and generate illicit revenues in violation of U.S. sanctions. South Korea's foreign ministry said Friday that these actions show the United States' stance that talking with North Korea and keeping pressure on the regime must go hand in hand to achieve complete denuclearization on the Korean peninsula. Back in 2014, the FBI accused North Korean hackers of a major cyber intrusion into Sony Pictures, which resulted in internal documents being leaked and data being destroyed. The attacks happened after the regime sent a letter to the UN demanding that Sony didn't release the movie The Interview, which portrayed the US-backed assassination of a character made to look like North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. 간영우, Arirang News.
There is growing volatility in the global financial market stemming from contagion risks of emerging economies. However, Seoul seems to be in the eye of that storm, at least for the month of August. Kim Jong-un help us look beyond the digits.
South Korea's central bank says the country's financial market shows no signs of capital flight despite contagion risks in emerging markets and a widening key rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. In its monthly data analysis for August, the Bank of Korea on Friday showed that the country's foreign currency exchange market maintained its level from a month earlier, trading at around 1,220 won against the greenback. The BOK also said the fact that foreign investment on local shares are mainly in the form of bonds have played a big part in preventing possible capital flight to the U.S. At present, the U.S. Federal Reserve's key rate is 0.5 percentage point higher than that of South Korea's, but is expected to widen if the Fed decides to raise rates later this month. Korea's 5-year credit default swaps, a form of insurance against default, fell by 3 basis points from a month earlier to 42 in August. The same data show interest rates of government bonds have risen in developed countries because of the economic boom in their economies. Interest rates for 10-year bonds of developed countries like the U.S. and Germany, considered mostly as safe assets, fell due to soaring demand. Meanwhile, interest rates in emerging economies, particularly those facing geopolitical risks, and high inflation rates have soared as their central banks try to prevent further depreciation of their currencies. After the Argentine peso fell, Buenos Aires raised its policy rate by a staggering 60%. Turkey also raised its key rate this year by 10 percentage points to 17.75% to stop the depreciation of the lira. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The ongoing tariff battle between Washington and Beijing appears to be entering a new phase. The deadline has passed for U.S. companies to submit their opinions to the government about the proposed new duties on China. Kim Hye-sung sheds light on the possible developments and repercussions from here on.
The deadline for American businesses to submit written comments on the U.S. Trade Representative's proposed tariffs on $200 billion worth of Chinese imports in July ended Thursday local time. Letters were submitted by tech companies like Dell and Cisco Systems, a coalition of the National Retail Federation, and 150 other organizations urging the USTR not to go for more tariffs, saying it would raise costs for consumers and delay investment. Now, President Trump is expected to make the next move, be it imposing 10 to 25% tariffs on $200 billion of Chinese goods in different phases or all at once. That would mark the third round of tariffs on Beijing after the 2 previous tit-for-tat rounds of $34 billion and $16 billion. Beijing has vowed to retaliate if the new ones go ahead.
If the U.S. ignores most companies' opposition in the hearings, acts arbitrarily, and imposes any new tariffs, China will have to take necessary countermeasures.
Previous talks between Washington and Beijing did not result in an agreement, and it seems the trade war is likely to escalate further, at least until the November midterm elections. The U.S. and China account for more than a third of Korea's total exports, so this trade spat is a major downside risk to the Korean economy, which already saw its exports slow down from the first quarter's 4.4% to 0.4% in the second quarter.
Korea mainly ships intermediary goods to China, which would be affected by the tariffs when finished goods are exported to the US. Also, if the Chinese economy slows down further, it could hurt demand for Korean exports in the country.
To hedge against the Trump administration's trade protectionist moves, Seoul has secured an exemption from steel tariffs in exchange for a quota and agreed on a 25% tariff on Korean pickup trucks and a doubling of the import cap on U.S. vehicles. But with the ongoing U.S.-China trade spat, trade renegotiations among the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, experts say the Korean government and companies should monitor the changing trade front and continue their outreach efforts to negotiate with their U.S. counterparts to secure Korea's footing. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Seoul is expanding cooperation with Hanoi in peacekeeping operations. The Defense Ministry announced today as Vietnam plans to deploy an engineering unit to South Sudan next year. The country asked the South Korean government to share their know-how gained through the successful deployment of the Hanbit unit to South Sudan. The troops assumed their duties in that nation in 2013 at the request of the UN. Seoul's Defense Ministry added that 2 engineer officers who served at the unit will visit Vietnam for about a week starting this Sunday to pass on information needed to successfully deploy a PKO. 5 military officers from Hanoi will also get the chance to visit the Hanbit unit in South Sudan for 2 weeks. Turning our focus to Japan now. Yesterday, Hokkaido was hit hard by an earthquake. Recovery operations are ongoing today, but the number of casualties continues to rise. Hong Yu has the latest from the country's northern island.
The number of deaths caused by the powerful 6.7 magnitude earthquake that hit Hokkaido on Thursday is now at least 18. 24 people are still missing and over 300 are injured. The Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, told an emergency meeting early on Friday that more than 20,000 rescue workers had worked through the night to search for survivors in the area around Asmachu village in Hokkaido. Power has been restored to 80% of the households in Hokkaido after the earthquake knocked out electricity to the whole island. But it could take at least a week to fully restore power to all households. Even the local airport, New Chitose Airport, has been closed. Some parts of the ceiling and the water pipes were damaged, and with no electricity, all morning flights were cancelled. More than 100 aftershocks have been detected so far, and with rain in the forecast, Japan's Meteorological Administration advised people to stay alert for possible further damage in areas where the ground has been weakened. Meanwhile, the South Korean Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking care of South Korean nationals stranded in the area by providing food and shelter. And starting from today, the ministry will try to get them home safely. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
Seoul's Environment Ministry is holding a special event to promote the importance of a greener lifestyle. This year, the focus was on turning recycled materials into fashion items, pet food, musical instruments, and much more. To fill us in on what Eco-Expo Korea 2018 is all about, here's our Yoon Jung-min.
Colorful clothes catch visitors' eyes. As well as being trendy and comfortable, they are made of recycled materials. The Environment Ministry launched the Eco-Expo Korea 2018 in Seoul this week to show how environmentally sustainable products can become part of people's everyday lives. Fertilizers and fodder are made of insect debris, and insects rather than meat are the main ingredients in this pet food too.
This pet food is made out of larvae. The natural ingredients have been processed to create the product.
Plastic products are often thrown away, but here they are transformed into musical instruments. Participants at the exhibition play musical instruments by themselves or generate power by pedaling bicycles.
I didn't realize waste can be turned into instruments, but it's simple to make and playing the instrument was cool.
The expo runs until this Saturday. This year's expo aims to let visitors see, feel, and touch eco-friendly products on site as part of an effort to promote a healthy and clean life. The Environment Ministry and the Environmental Institute say they will keep expanding support for small and medium-sized businesses that produce eco-friendly products through annual exhibitions. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Even after the sun sets, Gyeongbokgung Palace will be open to public. Various programs, including a royal meal and traditional music, are all the more reasons to drop by. Kim Dami outlines what to expect on the nocturnal tour.
The sun's gone down, but Gyeongbokgung Palace in central Seoul stays brightly lit past sunset. The Starlight tour begins as a court lady known as Nain welcomes visitors upon King Sejong's special request to serve the guests for the night. The first stop of the tour is Sojubang, the royal kitchen. Here, visitors taste 도숙술화상, a modern reinterpretation of the king's meal made up of 12 side dishes, from abalone dumplings to bamboo shoe pancakes.
Eating this royal meal and watching the performances at the palace make me feel like a king.
Traditional Korean musical performances entertain the guests and give them a chance to feel what the palace was like 600 years ago. After being fed like royalty, the visitors use Korean traditional lanterns called 청사초롱 to explore the palace. Sand art at Gyotaejeon Hall portrays the love story between King Sejong and Queen Sohyun. Located on a peaceful pond, Gyeonghwaedo Pavilion was once used for entertaining foreign guests and even now still captures visitors' attention. This annual tour, which runs not only in Korean but also in English, Japanese, and Chinese, is so popular that tickets have already sold out. If you can't get tickets for the Starlight tour, you can still enjoy the palace at night starting from September 16th. And if you're wearing hanbok, Korea's traditional clothing, then you can also get in for free. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
The third World Nomad Games is now on. Nearly 3,000 athletes are taking part in testing their mettle in a wide range of traditional sporting disciplines. Sabobin gets us better acquainted with this exciting event.
The 2018 World Nomad Games kicked off in Kyrgyzstan on Sunday, with representatives from each country celebrating ethnosports, traditional physical activities that have been made into sports. The World Nomad Games started in 2014 to revive, develop, and preserve the cultures of nomadic civilizations. 3,000 athletes from 77 countries are participating in 37 types of ethnosports, including arm wrestling, horseback archery, and tug-of-war. The South Korean arm wrestlers and wrestlers have also made their trip to Kyrgyzstan to take part. Korean athletes are practicing sirim, a type of Korean wrestling.
It won't be easy, but since many types of wrestling are similar to sirim, we should try our best.
A South Korean orchestra from Busan National Center for Korean Traditional Performing Arts also took part to represent Korean culture. Under the patronage of UNESCO, and with the slogan, United in Strength, United in Spirit, the third edition of the Games will run through September 8th. Arirang TV will be presenting Korean culture during the Nomadic Games and will be airing clips of the event in its documentary, Meet the Central Asia, later this month. Sabobin, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need before planning your weekend. Michelle, the weather virtually changed from one season to the other in just a matter of days. Is autumn already here?
That's right, Daniel, and you should take advantage of that conditions now. You'll be able to enjoy autumn's trademark blue skies tomorrow, and the same goes for neighboring Beijing and also Tokyo. Now, however, temperatures will fluctuate dramatically as we go further into September. Now, some places will have up to 10 degrees Celsius difference between the mornings and the afternoon, so don't underestimate that extra layer before heading outside. Now, Seoul will kick off the Saturday morning at 16 degrees Celsius. Busan and Jeju are about 4 to 6 degrees higher than the rest of the nation at 20 and 22 degrees respectively. And the temperature rises very fast up into the afternoon, topping 28 degrees for Seoul and similar elsewhere between 26 and 27 degrees. The lows will continue dropping, but the highs will remain in place for the time being due to the strong sunlight, so watch out for those temperature differences. Now, except for the East Coast, conditions will stay favorable on Sunday and through next week. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you in tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for staying with us. Have an incredible weekend.